At 79, Paul Newman finally shared thoughts about Elizabeth Taylor that few ever imagined he would reveal. For decades, these two Hollywood icons had captivated audiences with their on-screen charisma and off-screen charm. But Newman's reflections at this age gave a rare glimpse into the real person behind the legend. What made Taylor so magnetic? How did Newman perceive her? Not as a public-adored superstar, but as someone he knew intimately. That's the story he decided to open up about. Elizabeth Taylor was larger than life in every sense. With violet eyes that seemed to hold a universe of stories and a personality that could dominate a room without effort, she had an aura that drew people in. And Paul Newman, known for his calm charm, piercing blue eyes, and an intensity that came through in every performance, was perhaps one of the few men who could meet her on her own terms. Their worlds collided in Hollywood's golden era, a time when the studio system was at its peak. Gossip columns thrived, and every glance or whispered conversation could become a headline. But behind the glamour, there was a quieter, more human story. When Newman spoke, there was no pretense. He didn't exaggerate or indulge in Hollywood hyperbole. Instead, he painted a picture of Elizabeth Taylor as someone deeply complex, sometimes contradictory, but always remarkable. He described her wit, her fearlessness, and her capacity for loyalty, qualities that many admire from afar, but few understood up close. What he revealed at 79 wasn't sensational gossip. It was insight. Insight into a friendship and bond that survived decades of rumors, media speculation, and the pressures of being constantly in the public eye. Newman's reflection also hinted at a side of Taylor that the world rarely saw. Beyond the glamorous dresses, the sparkling jewels, and the tabloid headlines, she was someone who faced vulnerability, insecurities, and personal struggles. Newman recognized those layers, and his words conveyed a deep respect mixed with a quiet admiration. He didn't reduce her to a Hollywood legend or a screen siren. Instead, he acknowledged her full humanity, brilliant, stubborn, generous, and at times fragile. There's also the context of Newman's own life to consider. By 79, he had lived through decades of fame, personal successes, and public scrutiny. His perspective was shaped by maturity, reflection, and perhaps a desire to set the record straight in a way that gossip columns never could. In revealing what he knew about Taylor all along, he offered viewers more than just Hollywood anecdotes. He offered a lesson about understanding, empathy, and seeing people beyond the stories that are written about them. This revelation wasn't just a nostalgic look back. It was an intimate window into the kind of bond that survives fame, time, and public scrutiny. And while the world often remembers Taylor for her romances, Newman's words reminded everyone that some relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or somewhere in between, carry depth and significance that the public rarely appreciates. As we dive into their first encounters, it becomes clear that what started on the set of Cat on a hot tin roof was far more than a casual Hollywood friendship. What unfolded behind the scenes would shape their connection for decades and eventually lead to the reflections Newman shared late in life. Their paths first crossed in 1958 on the set of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, a film that would go on to define a new era in Hollywood storytelling. At the time, Elizabeth Taylor was already a superstar, renowned not only for her breathtaking beauty, but also for her commanding presence on screen. She had been navigating Hollywood's glare since she was a child, accumulating awards, fame, and a reputation for both brilliance and controversy. Paul Newman, in contrast, was still ascending, an actor whose intensity and charm had begun to catch the attention of critics and audiences alike, yet whose personal life remained largely private. From the moment they met, there was an undeniable electricity between them. It wasn't just a natural charisma that both actors possessed. It was something more subtle, almost invisible to everyone but themselves. Taylor, with her quick wit and sharp intuition, immediately recognized in Newman someone who could match her intellect and intensity. Newman, on the other hand, saw in Taylor not just a screen icon, but a person whose depth and complexity transcended the public persona. Their chemistry wasn't about flirtation alone. It was a meeting of minds and spirits, a rare connection that left a lasting impression on both. Behind the scenes, the environment was intense. Filming a Tennessee Williams classic was no small task, and the pressure to deliver performances that could meet the writer's lyrical and often harrowing dialogue weighed heavily on the cast. Taylor was known for her perfectionism, sometimes demanding multiple takes to capture the exact emotion she sought. Newman, whose method acting was emerging as one of the most compelling in the industry, was equally committed to authenticity. The two actors, both deeply immersed in their craft, often found themselves drawn into discussions about character motivation, dialogue nuances, and emotional undercurrents that could elevate a scene. These conversations, though professional on the surface, revealed a shared passion for their art and a respect that would form the foundation of their enduring connection. Outside the set, brief moments offered glimpses of their personalities. Newman observed Taylor's vulnerability, her capacity to laugh in the midst of stress, and her willingness to be candid about the difficulties of her career and personal life. Taylor noticed Newman's quiet confidence, the subtle charm that didn't need to dominate a room to command attention, and his ability to make those around him feel both comfortable and respected. These observations, small yet profound, created a bond that was invisible to most but impossible to ignore for those involved. What made their early encounters particularly fascinating wasn't just the chemistry or the professional respect. It was the unspoken understanding that formed between them. Neither needed to articulate everything explicitly. Their connection was apparent in the smallest gestures, the glances that lingered a fraction too long, and the shared laughter that cut through the tension of long shooting days. This understanding hinted at something deeper, a foundation of trust and empathy that would endure long after the cameras stopped rolling. While Hollywood watchers at the time might have chalked their relationship up to fleeting on-screen attraction, Newman's later reflections suggest it was far more nuanced. Their early encounters weren't just a story of two rising stars. They were the beginning of a lifelong respect and insight into each other's character, a story that would only reveal its full layers decades later. The bond between Paul Newman and Elizabeth Taylor went far beyond what anyone could see on the silver screen. By the time Cat on a Hot Tin Roof wrapped, they had developed a connection built not on fleeting attraction or Hollywood glamour, but on an unspoken understanding that few outsiders could grasp. This understanding wasn't about romantic declarations or public statements. It was about knowing each other on a level that transcended words, gestures, or appearances. Newman often reflected on Taylor in ways that suggested a profound respect and admiration. He recognized her brilliance, yes, but he also saw her humanity, her fears, insecurities, and the vulnerability she rarely allowed the world to witness. Taylor, meanwhile, seemed to sense the steadiness and perceptiveness in Newman, qualities that made him someone she could rely on without worry about judgment or the glare of fame. This mutual recognition created a silent agreement between them that their connection mattered more than what others thought or speculated. What makes this period so fascinating is how carefully they navigated it. Hollywood thrived on gossip, on romantic speculation, and on turning private friendships into public scandals. Newman and Taylor were acutely aware of this environment, yet instead of playing into it, they kept their bond discreet, grounded in mutual respect rather than the prying eyes of the media. They shared private conversations, moments of levity, and discussions about life and art that no journalist would ever witness. These moments were significant not because they were dramatic, but because they revealed the depth of their understanding. At times, the public did catch glimpses of their closeness, though it was often misinterpreted. Some saw flirtation where there was loyalty. Others mistook quiet companionship for romance. But Newman, in later years, suggested that what most people assumed was only part of the story. Their relationship was layered, nuanced, and existed in a space that few could define or categorize. It was a mix of admiration, trust, and shared experience, all bound together by the extraordinary circumstances of their professional lives. This unspoken understanding also shaped how they viewed each other's struggles. Taylor faced personal challenges that were amplified by her fame, the pressure of public scrutiny, the hardships in her private life, and the expectations that came with being a Hollywood icon. Newman witnessed these moments not as a critic, but as a confidant. His presence wasn't intrusive. It was steady, offering support without demands or conditions. For Taylor, having someone who understood her without judgment created a rare sense of security, a reprieve from the relentless pace of Hollywood life. Interestingly, Newman's reflections at 79 reveal that this understanding was enduring. Even as decades passed and both actors lived full lives apart from one another, the connection remained. It wasn't dependent on proximity or constant contact. It existed as a quiet, abiding recognition of each other's humanity. And that is what made their bond extraordinary. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't publicized, but endured, weathering rumors, gossip, and the passage of time. Ultimately, the unspoken understanding between Paul Newman and Elizabeth Taylor is a reminder that not all meaningful relationships are defined by labels or announcements. Some connections, the most profound ones, exist in subtle gestures, shared laughter, and the quiet knowledge that someone else truly sees you. For Newman, this understanding became a lens through which he reflected on Taylor's life, revealing insights about her character that the public never fully appreciated, and that he chose to honor with honesty, empathy, and respect. Hollywood has always been a place where reality and rumor blur, and the public perception of Paul Newman and Elizabeth Taylor was no exception. Even early in their careers, the media thrived on speculation about the nature of their relationship. Every glance, every shared smile, every whispered conversation on set became fodder for gossip columnists and eager fans. Yet, what the world assumed was often far from the truth. Newman and Taylor's bond was deep, but subtle, existing in moments that the public couldn't see, and it was constantly misinterpreted through the lens of celebrity obsession. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, Taylor was already considered one of Hollywood's most dazzling stars, her life chronicled in magazines, tabloids, and newsreels. Newman was rising fast, attracting attention for his magnetic performances, particularly in films like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and later The Hustler. Together, they had a chemistry that seemed undeniable on screen, and naturally, people wanted to attach labels. Were they an off-screen couple? Secret lovers? Best friends? The speculation was relentless. Yet, for Newman and Taylor, their connection was far more nuanced. Newman's later reflections suggest that the way the public viewed them missed the essence of what truly existed between them. He didn't describe a whirlwind romance or scandalous affair. He described a shared understanding, a respect that grew through shared experiences and mutual admiration. The public, however, often saw only flashes, dramatic moments, glamorous events, and snippets of conversation, and filled in the gaps with assumptions that were not always accurate. The tabloids thrived on exaggeration, framing their friendship as something titillating or sensational when in reality, it was built on trust and subtle intimacy. What made the public perception even more complicated was Taylor herself. She was famously charismatic, outspoken, and unafraid to embrace the spotlight. Her beauty and talent drew attention everywhere she went, and her personal life was always a subject of fascination. Every relationship she had, real or rumored, was scrutinized, dissected, and amplified. In contrast, Newman was measured, often letting actions speak louder than words. He didn't chase headlines, nor did he seek validation through gossip. Their different approaches only fueled public curiosity, creating a narrative that was part myth, part reality. Despite this, there were moments when the truth of their bond shone through. Colleagues and close friends observed a connection that wasn't just professional, noting a rare respect and empathy between them. Behind closed doors, they shared conversations about life, challenges, and the demands of their craft. Moments invisible to the world, yet profoundly shaping their understanding of one another. Newman recognized Taylor's brilliance and vulnerability, and Taylor saw in Newman a calmness and steadiness that few others offered. These glimpses were fleeting but meaningful, hinting at the depth the public couldn't grasp. Ultimately, public perception could never fully define their relationship. Rumor, speculation, and media narratives painted only part of the picture, often exaggerating what was already extraordinary. Newman's reflections at 79 serve as a corrective lens, offering clarity and insight into a connection that transcended headlines. He revealed a bond rooted in understanding, respect, and empathy, element invisible to a world that thrives on drama, but essential to anyone who truly knew them. The way the public imagined their relationship tells us as much about society's obsession with celebrity as it does about Newman and Taylor. While the world saw scandal and glamour, the reality was far richer, quieter, and far more enduring. A relationship defined not by speculation, but by the depth of human connection and understanding that lasted decades. As time passed and both Paul Newman and Elizabeth Taylor moved through different chapters of their lives, their paths diverged in ways that reflected both personal growth and the relentless march of Hollywood history. Newman focused on his family, philanthropy, and a career that spanned decades with remarkable consistency, while Taylor navigated her own complex personal life, continuing to captivate audiences and face the challenges that came with fame. Despite these separate journeys, the connection they forged early on never truly faded. It remained an invisible thread that tied them together through decades of experience, change, and reflection. In his later years, Newman often spoke of Taylor with a sense of reverence and nostalgia. He reflected on the intensity and brilliance that defined her career, but he also highlighted the aspects of her personality that the public rarely saw: her generosity, her courage in facing personal and health struggles, and the moments of vulnerability that she allowed only a few close friends to witness. These insights weren't just anecdotes. They were a testament to the bond they had built long before the tabloids attempted to define their relationship. Newman's admiration for Taylor was not about fame or performance. It was about character and the depth of understanding that comes from truly seeing someone. Reunions between them, though rare, were meaningful. Whether at charity events, industry gatherings, or private occasions, there was a quiet acknowledgement of the history they shared. Observers noted a familiarity and comfort in their interactions that went beyond typical Hollywood greetings. Their conversations, subtle and layered, often touched on memories of past projects, mutual friends, or personal reflections, allowing them to maintain a connection despite years apart. These encounters were never sensationalized. They were genuine, small windows into a relationship that had endured scrutiny and distance, defined by mutual respect rather than public spectacle. Taylor herself seemed to recognize and appreciate this bond. Known for her larger-than-life personality, she also valued the quieter, enduring connections that were built on trust and understanding. Newman's presence in her life, even when separated by time or geography, provided a steadying influence, a reminder of someone who had witnessed her brilliance and vulnerability without judgment. For both of them, these later years were a period of reflection, an opportunity to appreciate not just the fame and accolades, but the human connections that mattered most. The significance of their relationship becomes even more apparent when considering the backdrop of Hollywood life. Both actors endured public scrutiny, media speculation, and the constant pressure to perform, yet they managed to cultivate a bond that remained private and authentic. In later years, Newman's reflections reveal that their connection was not diminished by distance or time. Rather, it was strengthened by it. The shared understanding and respect that began on set had matured into a lasting friendship, one that transcended the superficial narratives imposed by the media. Ultimately, the later years of Newman and Taylor's lives offer a powerful insight into what endures when fame fades and time passes: the value of genuine human connection. Newman's ability to honor Taylor's memory with thoughtfulness and clarity reminds us that some relationships cannot be captured by headlines or rumors. They exist quietly, profoundly, and meaningfully. Their bond, cultivated behind the scenes and nurtured over decades, stands as a testament to enduring respect, admiration, and the subtle power of unspoken understanding. Reflecting on Paul Newman's insights at 79, it becomes clear that the story of his relationship with Elizabeth Taylor is far richer than the public ever realized. What many assumed was fleeting Hollywood chemistry was, in reality, a deeply rooted connection based on trust, respect, and profound understanding of each other's character. Newman's reflections reveal a friendship that transcended time, distance, and the relentless scrutiny of the media, a bond that was never about public perception, but about knowing someone on a fundamental, human level. Newman's words offer more than just a nostalgic look back. They provide a window into the nature of relationships that endure outside the spotlight. Taylor was a figure of immense charisma and brilliance, whose life was often dramatized by the press. Yet Newman chose to focus on the personal qualities that mattered most: her courage, humor, intelligence, and vulnerability. By emphasizing these elements, he reminded the world that the essence of a person cannot be captured by fame, gossip, or superficial headlines. In doing so, he shed light on the true depth of their connection, a depth built over decades of shared experiences, conversations, and subtle understanding. It's striking to consider that a bond so strong existed largely away from public scrutiny. While Hollywood thrived on romance rumors and tabloid speculation, Newman and Taylor maintained a relationship that was discreet yet enduring. They demonstrated that some of the most meaningful human connections are not the ones constantly displayed for public consumption, but the quiet, profound bonds formed through empathy, shared experience, and mutual respect. Newman's reflections underscore that enduring friendships, particularly in an environment as volatile and attention-driven as Hollywood, require patience, understanding, and a willingness to see beyond appearances. Another remarkable aspect of their connection is the way it evolved over time. From the early chemistry on the set of Cat on a hot tin roof, to the private understanding that developed behind the scenes, and finally to the reflective appreciation in their later years. Their relationship adapted, matured, and endured. This evolution speaks to the resilience of their bond, highlighting the importance of trust and loyalty over transient emotions or public acclaim. It's a testament to the fact that meaningful relationships are rarely static. They grow, deepen, and transform as life progresses. Ultimately, Newman's revelations at 79 reveal a story of respect and admiration that outlasted rumors, scandal, and the passage of time. He honored Taylor not just as a Hollywood icon, but as a person whose complexity and humanity demanded recognition. For viewers and fans, this serves as a reminder that true connections often exist beyond the lens of fame, and that understanding someone fully requires looking past the surface to the subtleties beneath. In the end, the tale of Paul Newman and Elizabeth Taylor is less about celebrity intrigue and more about the enduring power of genuine human connection. It is a story that speaks of friendship, respect, and the quiet bonds that survive decades. Their relationship reminds us that the most profound truths often lie behind what the world sees, unspoken, unpublicized, and deeply felt. And for Newman, revealing what he knew about Taylor all along wasn't just an act of nostalgia. It was a tribute to a friendship that defined part of his life, and that of one of Hollywood's most luminous stars.